weren't, you could have done that, but you would have to overlay that because it's not a matter of just revenue over time anymore. Now you're overlaying, okay, well, what are we selling, right? And I said to them all, okay, that's fine and dandy, but do you think maybe weather might affect whether somebody goes to a restaurant or not? So they overlaid the weather data over top, right? And I said, well, what about if they're in Ottawa, we have tons of festivals. We have food festivals, right? And they noticed a dip in business. And I said, well, what was going on in the city at that time? Was there a storm? Was there another food festival? Okay. So knowing, taking just the base information that you have out there, okay, great and dandy. You can tell anything from your base information, but what else is going on? What else is going on? And they figured out that, the drop of business was because that food festival was running 2 blocks around the corner and everybody was doing there. So they upped their marketing campaign. And they opened up an outdoor, they decided to open up an outdoor patio where people can sit because people wanted to eat outside. But you know what? How am I going to attract people over unless I have a marketing campaign that is going to match up against that food festival? I can cut my prices a little lower for that 1 week span when that food festival was on, and and attract people over to my restaurant. They'll like the food, and maybe they'll come back, right? So that's part of what we're telling them is that, okay, tell the story, but analyze the information, but realize that that information may not be enough either, right? And you add to that. Now, Watson Analytics, the new user interface was just to update it. Watson Analytics was introduced January of 2015 out to the public, and since then it's a cloud-based tool. Basically meaning that you can access it from anywhere. As long as you have an internet connection, you can get to it. Now, because it's a cloud-based tool also, and I've been caught on this a number of times, is that there's multiple updates. Okay, cloud-based tools, you can have updates running all the time. So if there's any problems with the software, the fixes come through a lot faster. But it also means any enhancements to the tool also come through a lot faster. And I've been caught. Tuesday, prepped all my stuff, and on a Wednesday, gone someplace, and they've actually changed things. Okay, they've added a new feature, or what happened to me last December is I went to a conference down in Dallas, and there are 4 tiles across, and you're going to notice that we only have 3 tiles across with regards to this interface here, but there were 4 tiles across, and it was import the data, do a discovery, assemble everything together, and then something about refinement. And somebody called me up and they said, stuff, we got everything prepped, we sent it off to the organizers. I said, did you notice a change this morning? And I said, what are you talking about? Right? And the presentation was on Saturday, right? They changed the complete interface on it to make it better. And the thing is that all my snapshots and my presentation was completely different. So the one thing I will, that all to say is to do realize that Watson Analytics, and even this right here, the way it looks is different from what's out there right now. They've updated it. Okay, the new version was released at the beginning of May. Okay, it's the interface is very intuitive, but there is a maintenance schedule, and I'll show you where you can actually get onto the list of the maintenance schedule so you know when things are happening. And the maintenance schedule will also tell you what they're changing and what's been updated. Yeah.
Does the data go up, or does the analytics go down?
Excellent question.
Check 1, 2. Check.
The data itself, okay, when you import it into Watson Analytics, it goes up onto the cloud. Okay. So it's not a live connection. It'll actually take what you give it.
Yes, just testing.
Onto a secured server.
So then my next question is that in Canada or the US?
Excellent question again. So your data is sitting in Canada in a server in Toronto. The backup to that server is in Montreal, and that's it.
So if we're going to use it for research, we can get confirmation of that from customers?
Yeah. The other side of the security for that, there is an FAQ for that. There is an FAQ up on the community site answering all those questions. But in general, the data that you upload.
Oh, good. Yes, the presenter is not mic right now.
It's in Canada, and Toronto and Montreal is the backup.
We had to work, IBM Canada had to work quite extensively with the World
it is a hard delete. There is no archiving of it or anything, so it gets deleted off the Toronto server and then immediately off the Montreal server. So there is
Not
a,
like Facebook.
pardon me?
Not like Facebook.
Not like Facebook, yeah. Once it's gone, it's gone. Facebook, we all know that we're there forever. Unless you find somebody who can actually scrape you off of the internet on the links. Anyway, but excellent question there. Now the user interface itself, they've changed it just with regards to how the user works with the interface itself, the data itself, the insights, the background engine has been improved also with regards to generating more accurate insights themselves. We do give you some default, what we call explore points. So when you've actually imported in, what Watson Analytics will do in the background is that that analytic engine, the SPSS modeler and statistical engine runs in the background and it finds correlations between data. And they're just starting points, really, is what it comes down to. Is did you know that, right? Maybe you already did. Maybe you don't care. It's, it really depends, but it's a start off point.
I started with that when I was doing my presentation in class, and Dennis wasn't there. And I covered the explore portion just fairly quickly. I didn't spend too much time on it, but students wanted to keep going back to that because that's where you can type in some natural language type questions, and they just thought it was great.
Yeah,
So,
and if you notice that, I think right after we had that presentation, there wasn't anything that showed you how to type those questions in, but they added that in, and I'm going to be showing everybody that also. How there are keywords that you can use, but you can also type in any question you want, and what will happen is that Watson Analytics will interpret what you type in and say, I'm pretty confident that this is what you're looking at, and that confidence level that you were asking about, and we'll see that when we go in. All right. There's the experience is
Can I
streamlined.
ask you a quick
Sorry, go ahead.
question? So does that work kind of like Wolfram Alpha, what those guys do? That sounds from how you describe
Sorry,
it.
say that again?
Wolfram Alpha?
Okay.
You're familiar with those guys?
No, not necessarily.
Okay. Skip the question.
Let's get the question for now? Okay. I wouldn't be able to talk intelligently about that, so. I might have something in my head triggers afterwards, but I'll try to see if I can think of it. I might come back to it. So anyway, there's a new interface, there's a new user experience. We'll get into that. I'm not going to stick on this slide for too much. There is an expansion of the natural language dialogue that you've used in the past, and some extra insights, and there's starting points, and there's additional capabilities in there. We're going to take a look at that. But generally, there's three things that you go through with Watson Analytics, or three steps. There's the importing of the data itself, and doing any kind of fine-tuning to it. So you're basically, before you get to Watson Analytics, prepare the data. Make sure it's clean, okay? There's no use going into a tool and bringing data into a tool if it's not clean, because then you're just getting junk coming out, okay? And there's a data preparation part to it. Now, I'll talk a little bit more about the data prep afterwards, because there's a company called Monarch that we have teamed up with regards to data preparation. I'll talk about that in a moment. But there's the loading of the data and the shaping of your data itself. And really what this comes down to is that when you're loading your data in, okay, let's say you're bringing it in from Excel spreadsheets, Watson Analytics will recognize whether it's a numeric or alphanumeric or whether it's a date field. And in some cases, it will actually create some automatic hierarchies for you. Okay, let's say based on time, so year, quarter, month, etc., depending on what is fed into it. Okay, but you may find that because you're the business user and you're taking your own information or you're accessing information that somebody has given to you and you're bringing it in and you want to do the explore side, you are also able to create your own hierarchies. So, for example, I mentioned time. Time, everybody knows year, quarter, month, week, day, or what have you. But there's also hierarchies for locations. So North America broken down into Canada, the States, Canada and the States broken down into each of their provinces and the states, so to speak, and in some cases you may have branches. So you may be setting up some of those hierarchies.
How spatially aware is Watson? Can you give it latitude, longitude, or things like that? Or is it?
Not completely that way, but I do know that the mapping technology that's used in the background So it does recognize countries, it does recognize cities, it does recognize provinces and states. I know there is an issue with regards to Georgia, because Georgia is not only in the States, but it's also the country, right? So there are some issues with that. The new mapping technology does recognize it much better, and it also allows you for doing the up and drill down. So I have some stuff on that that I'm going to show you, just to give you a little bit of an idea, but we're not going to go into it, but it's there. It is spatially aware. The longitude, latitude side, I haven't honestly tried with this one yet, but I know that they're trying to make sure that they augment things as they go along to make it much more aware. So, good question. So there's the hierarchies, as I mentioned. There's also groupings, and the best example I have of that is we used airline data before, and instead of looking at the hours that flights have actually left, we group the hours into early morning, mid-morning, late morning. Okay, so anything from 1 till 5 in the morning, we create a grouping called early morning, or red eye, or whatever you want to call it, right? And the late morning and the afternoon, etc. So you can create groupings also. The other thing you could also do is actually change, by default, any numeric information read in has automatic aggregation applied to it, and it's usually just summing up of the information. So you can go in and make adjustments to that also. And there is a refinement of data at this step, but there's also a refinement of data at the other side. So you can also, like when you're actually going into your discovery portion. And what I'll say about the refinement of data, if you're adding filtering or groupings or whatever else in at this particular point, that they will propagate through any data discovery that you're actually going to be doing. All right? Second step is actually going in and taking a look at the information, seeing what you can find, taking a look at the explore points, asking your own questions, setting up your visualizations, setting up your predictions. There is a predictive aspect to it where you can basically say, okay, so if I have the following, let's say, revenue value as my target, what are the predictors for that revenue, right? I mean, in most cases, anybody can say expenses, but it could be location, it could be time of year, or whatever else it happens to be. It could be the product line that's actually sold in that area, whatever else it happens to be. So there is a predictive capability to it, and there are some extra discovery points for every chart that comes up. If you ask for something specific, then some additional ones will also be generated for you from the background. So there's an engine running in the background that, based on what you're asking for, it'll say, hey, you know about this also. So there's that predictive capability on that side. There are a lot of different types of visualizations available to you, whether it's bubble charts, whether you're going with the traditional pie charts or bar charts, but there's also the maps, etc. also. Okay, the third step is going to be going off and communicating everything. So the other thing that when Watson Analytics came out, it wasn't a matter of only loading up the data and doing the discoveries, but also being able to share that information with others. And the sharing of information can be done by email. It can be done through PowerPoint presentations or PDFs. You can post up to Twitter if you wanted to. You can post something up to Twitter if you wanted to. But the other part of it is you can create infographics. You can create dashboards. And dashboards could be across multiple tabs if you wanted to also. You could also create presentations and time-based presentations themselves, where you can actually run a slideshow and have the timing of each part of that dashboard show up for, let's say, 10 seconds or 5 seconds, so that you can do a standard presentation off. You can also send off and share off by email any of that information itself. So there's all of those different options available to you, and you can also monitor these. Now, I talked about data preparation. IBM has got IBM and a number of other companies. I mean, Microsoft. Who's that other competitor? Tableau. Can't believe I said it. Who's that other competitor? Tableau. They've all come into a business relationship of the data prep, you have to understand your data, think with the data, take a look at it. Here's a great tool where you can actually bring multiple data sets, whether it's multiple CSV files, whether it's PDFs, there's Hadoop that's in there, there's log files, HTML, whatever you want. You can bring them all together and actually generate out a file out of this, and then suck that into Watson Analytics. Okay, and then start doing your work. So there is a data prep side on that, and it's for business users. Okay, this is putting data prep into the hands of the business users. That was their point. Monarch wanted to give people the capability of actually doing their own data prep, as opposed to waiting for somebody else to do it. Okay, so there's that part also. There's also something new called storybooks with Watson Analytics. So what we have found over the last year and a bit is that there are some standard things that people are doing when they're putting their stories, so to speak, together. So there are a number of different templates that basically target these common type of use cases that people have actually put together. And really what it does is just helps people put basically chunk all the different reports that they have in. And there are some there's 8 of them that are available up on the website, up on the community itself. I'm going to be showing you the community. We're starting off with the community in a few minutes. But there are the version. If you sign up for a version now, there is you get a 30-day trial and you get access to a whole bunch of stuff. But for faculty themselves, we do have an actual program where you can get Watson Analytics. It is used for no cost still, right? So, and you can get it for the college itself, and you can all use it. I actually use the faculty version with Algonquin College, and I simply just invite all of my students into that workspace. I can have up to 1,000 of them at a time. I only had 25, but I can have up to 1,000 of them at a time. They use my space, they bring in their data, and then on top of that, what happens is they all get their own folder, but I can go in and take a look at it and see what the work that they've done. Yes?
So there's because I went to the link you sent. So
Yeah.
it's a form, a PDF form
Yes.
that we have to email, I guess, to you.
What you do is email it to the Watson Analytics group. There's an email in there. I think it's wa@ibm.com.
So, but it asks about like if you're teaching courses. So
Yes.
in my case, we're in the teaching center.
Yes.
And the idea, combination of our learning analytics is
Yes.
coming up. So what would we just put a teaching center in there?
Yeah, you can put the
Okay.
teaching center in there. Carrie, have you run
So
across that?
are you teaching students on how, or you're looking to use it to help identify maybe a student that's at risk or something like that?
I'm in faculty development, so I mean, this
Yeah.
is all pretty
She's
new.
training faculty.
You're
Pretty
training
new,
that.
so
Yeah,
just to.
yeah, it would
maybe
just
play
be
around.
it would just be a vetting process that somebody gets the email and they kind of look to see what your role is. And
Yeah.
there's probably some comments that you could add there and it would be
Yeah.
improved.
I also, when I remember that right, these course-related questions are not mandatory. So you might not even have to fill it out.
We have researchers going in and saying, I'm using it for research, and this is the research I'm doing. And generally, they're pretty quick on the response side. I know when I set mine up for Algonquin College back in February, it took a day. I actually got something at the end of the day. I'm not sure, did you do that also, Tony?
I did, it was very quick, I can't remember.
Yes.
Yeah, mine was the day after.
Yeah.
I got mine. So Anika
What
I
did
did
you
put
do?
back to vote, but then I teach math, so I kind of said math. But really, I
Yeah, you
think
could be pretty
they're happy to
general.
just have people use the academic initiative program at IBM is very, very generous. We, as part of computer studies, before we've been part of academic initiative, they just wanted really people to kind of use their software. But they just kind of have this, I guess they just have to tick off that this person does this. So I don't think they're going to reject you, I think, on any of
No,
those
they're very
bases.
If they do, you can call me and I will set them
Yeah.
straight.
But I did get it.
Carrie's very good at setting anybody
Setting
straight.
people
Yeah, so I did, sorry, so I did get it the next day and set up, and I've got my, like, Watson AI.
Now, anybody who's got the older version is going to be upgraded to the newer version and all, but I don't think that's an issue for most of you. If you haven't got one already, you're going to get the newer version right away. So there's different, there's by faculty, by by students. Students can also sign up for one. It's good for a year, and then you just say after the year is over, I need it again.
Yep.
And they just keep renewing it. So it's a very, very simple program, and they will send you, your time is almost up, and you just say, well, please qualify for it. And I believe now they have a campus one, campus-wide one also. And it's for however many users. You can always talk to Carrie about that. I'm just a tech guy. Anyway, so for just the whole solution overview itself, Watson Analytics does have a number of different parts to it. The part I'm going to be showing you today is the free one. Okay, the free version allows you access to all types of data sources for the first 30 days. Okay, so you're going to get Twitter, you're going to get databases, Excel spreadsheets. I'll show them to you when we get into them. Okay, I'll show you what's available. Oracle databases, Salesforce, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's also secured connections. Like if you want to connect to, let's say, Stats Canada or whatever else it happens to be. But we'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. There's also the social media side. Okay, the classic version, and this would have been what you would have seen, Tony, is that all of a sudden the social media one showed up, but now what they're doing is that they've removed it and they've created their own little cell or whatever because of the capabilities that they wanted in them. So they've extended the capability of the social media side, and they go after message boards. It's not only Twitter, but they go after all the message boards that happen to be out there. If you want, if you go onto Google, if you want to see what that looks like, and this is the best example I've seen, is that I've gone onto Google and enter in Star Wars, Force Awakens, Watson Analytics. There's a 6-minute video showing you how they actually used Watson Analytics social media to decide on a marketing campaign. And that's the way that they had actually set it up. It's actually quite interesting, and it's quite easy actually to do that setup. There's the plus version, and then there's the pro version, and basically the pro version is you can do anything you want up to, I can't remember how many rows of data, but
So today's, you're saying you're going to show us the analytics free one, but is that different from the academic initiative version?
it's the same thing.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so this free one is actually the professional version for the first 30 days.
Okay.
And after the 30 days, it goes back to only being able to bring in CSV files or common delimited files.
So even with the academic initiative thing,
No. With the academic initiative, you're getting the pro version.
okay.
All right. Yeah, the pro version is what's available, which is what you want for your class,
Yes.
because you want them to be able to access any type of data that happens to be out there. So that's what you'll get
Thank you.
with the academic version. Now, attached to Watson Analytics, there's also the data watch that I mentioned. Okay, SPSS modeler, you can bring in your .sav files from SPSS into Watson Analytics. And I do get asked that on the predictive side, because a lot of people are expecting Watson Analytics to be that SPSS statistics modeler predictive capabilities. It's not. Okay, so generally what I say to people is the predictive qualities within Watson Analytics are very good. Okay, they're very good for somebody who is not a statistician. Okay, it'll satisfy some people, but not everyone. And generally what I suggest to them is that if you want to do some very deep statistical or data modeler type of SPSS stuff or whatever, I'm stumbling over the words I want to use here, but I suggest to them to go into SPSS data modeler or stats, do their deep functionality that you want to do in there, and then take that .sav file and suck it into Watson Analytics for the actual visualizations. Okay, I personally, I've taught SPSS data modeler and statistics, but I like the visualizations from Watson Analytics much, much better. Okay, they're much cleaner and much easier to actually read. There is TM1, Planning Analytics. Has anybody heard of TM1? Nope, we'll go on. Okay, and then there's the data watch. So, but the TM1 is part of our planning analytics, so on the finance side, and you can hook that information in also. So there are some resources. These are the books that I use when I'm talking to students.
Question.
Oh, sorry.
That's a quick question. Does Watson have access to the questions asked on search engines like Google, for example?
So you're looking at
The connection is, for example, Google offers this service. How many
Oh, I see
people
what you
ask
mean.
this question,
You know what?
outbreaks of certain.
You know what?
events?
I don't know. I'll have to look into that. So there may be some new connections that they've added in. And actually, somebody in our office asked about it last week, and I haven't had a chance to really deep down on it. So I honestly can't
No,
answer
that's
that
fine.
for you.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. There are a number of connections, but you know what? When we go into the connections, we'll see if there's actually something there for it. Okay, because I know we have some other ones that are in there that are automatic, so we'll take a look. These are some of the books that I use, thinking with data. Okay, bad data is good data. There's this book called Data Science for Business, and it goes into the analysis of data from the data science side, but not so deep that your business students will go crazy and decide that they're going to run out of the hall screaming. Okay, but even for some data scientists, those who are really into the statistical side, it's a great book. They actually promote the use of that book, and online they have a companion site. They have exams with answers. They have presentation slides you can use. It's a sharing site where you can actually get a lot of information for that. So that's a great book. I've actually used this one before. This is a very visual book, okay? And the head first, the people from there's a number of head first guides that are available out there. Very well written, very visual. It's a new way of writing an actual instructional booklet. I got to tell you, there's a lot of instruction in it, but it's really easy to read, but it's very, very rich. There's also the field guide for data science by Booz Allen Hamilton that I use with the students. It really depends. I basically gauge. This is a great book for an overall view. There's a presentation up on my site that I put together for thinking with data. Again, you can grab that one and use it if you want to. It's a very high level one, but I'm going to be making some other versions of it. But these are some of the books that I use. Up on the site where I'll include you in, and for those of you who walked in late, make sure I get your email address so I can invite you in. I have a number of links to books, and these, by the way, you can get for free. Okay, I try to point to books that you can get for free. It doesn't always work, but I'll suggest some to you. But definitely you can get the PDF for these, and the students can get them also. All right. So I try to make sure that I pick books out that are out there. The other thing I use with my class is I do use the CRISP DM methodology. How many people have actually heard of CRISP DM? No? Probably if you're on the SPSS side, you might have seen it or whatever. This methodology here is not an IBM one. This is something that was developed by actually the SPSS people, but Daimler Chrysler and one other company I can't for the life of me remember. But they go through these 6 different parts of there's business understanding, data prep, the modeling, the evaluation, the deployment. It's a great book. There is one available up on my site. Okay, again, there's a link over to it. I have a presentation available for that also at a high level, but I'm also creating one at a deeper level. It really comes down to how you want to introduce, but the idea behind it, it's agnostic. It doesn't care what tools. The one thing I like about this process, it doesn't care what tools you're using. Okay. For those of you who have used SPSS Modeler, you will see on the side, on one of the side panels that there is an area for each of those 6. Okay, they've actually included it into there. And I mean, them being one of the people that were on the team, and it took them a couple of years to put it together. But I find it's very relevant. They're very good at making sure that people understand what it takes to actually work with your data. And you'll notice that for each of the different phases, there is a back and forth between them also. With the idea of the fact that everything's always an iterative thing. You may find something part of the way through the process, and you have to go back and adjust. All right? So that's the other thing that I usually bring into the class. It's just to not overwhelm them, I usually bring it in as a 1-hour presentation for them. That's what I put together up on the site there. And again, anything that is up on my site, you can grab and do whatever you want with. Okay? These resources, I'm going to update some of them because of the new version that came out, but most of them are pretty accurate. The register one obviously is different, but there is a YouTube channel. There are some how-to videos. I'm going to double check the how-to videos still apply because the importing of data, although the interface looks a little bit different, you're still doing the same thing. The refinement of data, still doing the same thing. It's just the interface has been improved to make things a lot easier for you. On Big Data University, there is a free course, 2 hours long, and it's for free. Anybody can take it. They are going to be updating it from the discussion I had with somebody about a month ago. Okay, they had a presentation that they were going to be updating this, but anybody can sign up onto. Has anybody used Big Data University at all? Okay, so there's about 400,000 students that actually use it, and if you want to send them there for enablement for Watson Analytics, it's basically broken down into 5 sections. There's videos, there's actually a workbook and spreadsheet and a CSV file that they actually use, and it walks them through on how to use Watson Analytics. And they will be updating it, as I mentioned, for this version right here. Okay, the actual workbook and the spreadsheet, or the CSV file that's used there, is also up on my site. I've actually taken it and I put it up there, and there is a new version, by the way, so I've got the new version up online. Not for Watson Analytics 2.0, but the latest one before we moved over. There's use cases and sample data, and I'm going to show you where those are right now. So that's a quick overview. I know I've been talking for a bit, and I know some people have to go, so I'm going to jump. Does everybody need a stretch or anything?
Bathroom break.
Want a quick break? 5 minutes? 5 minutes? Okay, let's take a quick break, and then what we'll do is we'll jump right into the tool itself. Okay?
In case you don't know where the washrooms are on this floor, it's just right down the hallway to the very end. Hi. Bruce? Oh, okay. Yeah, no problem. No problem. That happens very
We were in the same one.
So you're in the same one? Okay. So I just want to double check to make sure you're on my list so that I can send the information to you.
People tend to be quiet now?
Okay, so you're not on here.
No.
I know the email addresses are usually first name, last name.
Just be careful what you say.
At Georgian College, but if you could just make sure your name's there.
You go ahead, I'll get them.
Is yours there? Okay, great. So the other thing is that the presentation and the workshop I'm going to go through are going to be made available to you along with the data set. Okay, so you don't have to worry. If you haven't got it set up, don't worry. It's going to be available for you. I'm just making some updates to it. And because I wanted to, today being the first day that I'm running that workshop, and whatever mistakes I make, I'm going to fix them and then so that we don't run into the same thing.
We were just gonna go over the summer.
And the first class, it's not there. It's just your first name. And then
I can walk you guys over.
it's only if it's something slightly different that I'm going to need a little more. And actually, I'll give everybody the business card.
We have, we've started to do, I'll call it the Watson Analytics faculty tour with, some of the institutions, Ryerson.
So on the back of it is my,
They've got a program that the Ontario government has funded called ADAPT, and what they're trying to do is
this one right there instead.
non-business students.
Right?
Nice to meet you, I'm Jen, by the way.
Jen, yes. I figured out when you checked your data.
Just in case.
Okay.
Math
Yeah,
business.
and anything you need on the curriculums, I work on curriculum. I'm educational.
Analytics is a crossover industry, so they're trying to help some of those
Using
students that have
analytics
never
into
really
programs, whether it's on the
understand
topical
why
side or
working with
the
data is really critical to
but I also
success.
work with
So
people
we've been doing a workshop there for them.
themselves, so I work with Cloud Analytics.
With University of Windsor has actually built Watson Analytics into one of their business programs. And they've had 2 classes go through that particular program. And they've done a capstone project where they're giving the
So
students
whatever you
actually
need, I'm a
work where
technical,
they do a business
I got
case and
technical background,
present it.
so that's, and
So
I
that
work in
it's just,
education.
it's starting.
Um, One of my roles, I'm part of a program called Educational Technology. There's two representatives from every college in that community.
Yeah,
And
no,
it's made up of
absolutely, and
faculty.
anything you need on
Some
it.
people are advanced, some people are instructors of central teaching and learning, so it's a just after we finished it last week, what's this year's, next, it was at Humber College, but next year it's going to be at Mohawk College. And 2 years ago, we actually hosted it here. But I'm thinking that would be a good venue for this. And now usually their sessions are like short hour kind of stuff. But one thing that I haven't seen, but I think would be interesting for that conference to have is a pre-conference kind of thing, where you can have longer, like 4 hours, 3 hours kind of work. And because likely, because we've been sort of previous conference,
No problem.
that would probably be asked by Mohawk.
We work closely with Mohawk.
Oh, perfect.
as well. We started to, Mohawk
So you have a way of getting hold of me. Just the Twitter account, right?
That's
Twitter account's on the back.
which is IBM's other,
Yes, you bought us.
right, right. So, that's something we could definitely talk to,
Well, what I'll do,
who at Mohawk would be tons of folks there, but
yes,
you can link me in.
exactly.
And then we
Just
can-
the Twitter account.
Because I'm actually part of the exec for that committee, so we definitely will be talking about next year's thing. And I think as much as the 1 hour things are great during conference, I think like longer things like this are also good. So I think what I'll suggest is, hey, Mohawk, why don't you guys do a pre-conference? Because the day before, it's usually a 3-day event, like the Wednesday to Friday. But the Wednesday is generally the exec meeting and then the AGM as well. But people come in anyway, there's a social on the Wednesday night. But I think if they could attract people to it, if they had pre-conference, like,
Wednesday,
this.
1 to 5.
Yeah, Wednesday 1 to 5, exactly. And I think this would be one place is perfect for that, and it's a perfect venue for it, because these are people that all involved in that kind of stuff, and this would definitely be able to.
Yeah, that would be great.
All right, so I'll
Yeah.
begin that conversation with them.
There's lots of business that we're which are the ones where you try to, where you have the connections and where you have the relationships, right?
Oh, really?
Oh, good. No, they're coming back. Invited them back. Late August, right. I just moved Watson and Spatial, and there's actually a research team, I just noticed on the IBM
Oh, yeah.
research side that works in that.
Good.
in that.
Oh, yeah, the spatial side with Watson Cognitive, that's what that area is there for,
Okay.
as opposed to Watson Analytics. So there's some stuff that's on the cognitive side that, once they've got the research done on it, they push
Push that out.
functionality out as much as they can, or what
Right.
functionality makes sense out of the tools and stuff, so.
Right.
But yeah, on the spatial side, I knew they were doing it there, and I probably should have mentioned it, but I was thinking
It's
Watson.
just starting on the journey,
But,
yeah.
I'll try to keep.
I'm just curious if there is a bridge how I could maybe indicate that.
Well,
Spatial stuff.
the Blue Mix,
No, I
academics,
haven't yet. This was kind of our
environment
introduction.
allows for you to work with that immediately on the spatial side. And they'll actually, even on the SPSS side, you have the spatial included in the newer versions, like version 17. Now, version 18, they've extended it even further, so. And version 18 was just released this month. But yeah, the spatial, we're finding the geospatial side of things are really being implemented in to a lot of areas. You need it.
Enormous strides.
Oh, I know, well, they're taking statistics for traffic and they're overlaying the geospatial onto it so that they can.
Yeah, also
traffic
in the
maps.
house area, the house area is probably from an economic perspective, the biggest driver.
Yes.
Because recognition of trends.
Yes.
And all this kind of stuff.
Exactly. So they've, there's so much stuff going on the cognitive side. I can't even keep up with. Oh, this is, it's amazing, it's amazing what they're doing right there, so. Get it going. All right. Okay, just, in the interest of
Are you
time.
familiar with speedtest.net?
No.
It's a little site where you can go and you can check how fast your internet
So,
connection is.
what we'll do is
Tell you
we'll,
what in a minute.
yeah, we're gonna get going. Oh, she's not back, where is she?
I'm here.
Oh, Samika, go ahead.
Go ahead, okay. Okay, so what I'm gonna do. Students, right?
Samika's our summer intern. Oh,
So when she comes in, actually, when she comes in, I'd like everybody to give her a hand.
The
Let's
poor
just do that.
girl.
Just do that. I've done that in my
Poor
other
girl.
classes before, nobody ever shows up late again. So, you will get a copy, up on my box account, I will put a copy So what we're going to do is, as I mentioned earlier, the idea behind Watson Analytics is to do who, what, where, when, why, all that stuff about the information that you happen to be working with. We won't give Tony a standing O because he showed up on time. But anyway, what we're going to do is we got some HR data, and the idea here is that we are going to take a look at understanding the training budget so that we understand where it's being applied right across the company. So to start off with, there's 3 areas here, okay? We'll bring the data in a moment. What I'd like to show you very quickly, just over on the side here, if I click on this and I take a look at the account settings, this is me, okay? There's my subscription. I've got the 30-day trial here, but when you apply for that Watson Analytics program, it won't say trial. You'll have the professional version in on there. As far as data connections, okay, there's a number of data connections that you can set up with the trial itself by simply just clicking on the plus sign off to the side, and you can see the different types of, just with the trial version, what kind of connections you can make. And I'm trying to find the, no, I don't see the one that you were talking about earlier. I might be missing it, but these are the data connections that you have available to you. Okay, you select the type, and then you just basically specify where that database is located. Okay, so if I was to do SQL Server, I've got one on my machine, not this particular one. I basically give it a name, I can put a description, and then I specify the gateway, the port, and everything that it's on. And that's all I have to do. So that when you are actually going and retrieving any information from a database, you point to it, say I want information from that database, and then you have the option of either putting in SQL, your own SQL if you want, or you can work from a data tree. So for all of your query subjects and query items, you can go through and just select them, and then some SQL will be generated for you in the background. Okay, so you have a number of different ways of actually pulling that data in. The secure gateways, I'm not going to do anything with that other one. The secure gateways are things like StatsCan. You've been given access for, let's say, your class or whatever. We have the Marketing Research Board Institute at Algonquin College that I'm working with, and you can add in a gateway. You'll also notice that there's a number of other clients down available below. They do have, for those of you who work with APIs, anybody here work with APIs? They're having some of that being brought in, and you can actually get into the code itself and make adjustments if you want also. I'm not going to be covering that today though, so I'm staying at a higher level. So, okay, just so everybody knows. So that's the account side. Over on the top corner with the question mark, there is the docs area, and this is all the documentation you'll ever need for Watson Analytics, and it's updated on a constant basis. Okay, there's the basic information like different versions, getting started, navigating Watson Analytics. I'm going to try to show you as much as I can with the navigation side of things. So I'm not going to cover everything here, but if you want some extra information on the basic side, there is also the getting started. A lot of what I'm showing you is from the getting started side. We are going to be taking a look at uploading data, asking the questions, doing some discovery, and then we're going to set up a display. Okay. There are other areas available. Each of them are broken down. Each of those areas are broken down, as well as the sharing, how to organize things, how to do administration. And then there's also the Watson Analytics for social media side that they go into more detail about. Okay. So that's the docs home area.
Dennis?
Yep.
I don't know if I'm jumping ahead. That data item, is that the sample data sets?
This is the data part that we're going to talk about. So they go into a little bit more detail about adding spreadsheets, adding Twitter data, how to work with each of the different data types.
Are the sample data sets that were in previous versions still in there?
Yes, they are. And I'll show you where those are also. I'll make sure I point those out. So yes, there are some sample data sets. Here they are right here that they talk about. They're all available there. We made them available in Watson Analytics because not everybody had data available to them. Okay, that's really what it comes down to. This data has already been cleaned and everything like that. It's just a matter of bringing it in and then doing your exploration. Okay, so that's what the data part is. And so it's a simple navigation, going through back and forth, how to filter data, sorting calculations, etc. So they go into more detail. This workshop, this tutorial will actually walk through the data. I'll never be late to one of my presentations. You're here until September? Yeah, there you go. I won't be back to Toronto before then. Anyway, to get back, you can click on Watson, the tool up at the top here, or just use the back button to get back to where you were before. This is not the most efficient way of doing it. It did open up a new window here, just so you know, so that I can actually get back to Watson Analytics. Clicking anywhere up here will bring me back to the main window. There's one other site I want to show you, and then we'll get into this, okay? And that's the community home. On the community itself, there is a getting started area with a multiple number of videos. There are resources. There's the event videos. There's the different events. We do have events, webinars that come up with the use of Watson Analytics in certain focus areas, where somebody is doing a presentation on it. So there's those there. And there are also documentation, the Watson Analytics docs, but there's also forums, blog areas. The blog area, I will tell you, if you're having an issue with Watson Analytics or you can't figure out how to do something, you go to the blog area, put a question in, and our actual Watson Analytics developers are responding to the questions. Okay. The Watson Analytics, the developers we have for this tool are in tune. They want to come to schools, they want to work at hackathons, etc. They're the ones who are answering the questions, so you can be pretty certain that you are getting some information from somebody who knows what you're talking about. So there's your ask a question part, and on top of that, you can also sign up. There's an area here, there's the maintenance schedule you can sign up for. So you'll get a notification, or you can go and take a look to see what the maintenance schedule is all about. All right? So that's the other area. I'll let you look at that one on your own. But you can see that there's a number of breakdowns, the offerings themselves, and accessing Watson Analytics. So that's all I'll say about that. Let's get into the fun stuff here. You can start adding data in by clicking on the new data box right up at the top. And from here, you can go to your sample data. So that's where your sample data is now. I can go to Box. I can go to Dropbox. I could have data stored off into multiple places that you can run off to. I will go to the Twitter one afterwards, okay? So, or you can go to any connections that you may have set up, any database connections that I was showing you a little bit earlier on. This is where they would show up. Or you can go to a local file, which is what we're going to be doing, and I will give you access to this data file. That's the HR training information. I will tell you that with any spreadsheet or comma delimited file that you're working with, or even a database file, make sure that the column names ahead of actually importing them in actually have a meaningful name on them. Because when you're actually entering in your questions of your own, it's better that the actual column names are something that's readable or understandable. Okay? There are some systems where you do not have that luxury. Okay? The names of the columns are very, very archaic, but you can work with those here. So I'm going to select this CSV file. Click on the open, and what will happen is that it'll show up here. That doesn't mean that it's been imported yet. You have to go down to the bottom corner, bottom right corner, and say imports. And what's happening in the background now is the engine, the SPSS engine that I talked about a little bit earlier on, is going through and it's reading all the rows of data. It's taking a look at all the columns. It's looking for any kind of relationships. It's taking a look at the metadata, so it's taking a look at the description of the data that it's bringing in, whether it's numeric, character, date, the size of the field itself. And then what it does is right near the end, it will give you this tile. Okay? I call it a tile. They're now calling it a data asset. Okay? Call it whatever you want, but that's where your information is, and you can start from this point. Now, there are a couple of options on here. Okay? First off, you can click up on the top arrow here, and it'll actually get you into your starting point. Okay? I'll get to that in a second. The other thing is there's these three dots down at the bottom. Now, the data at this particular point is up on the server. It's on the server in Toronto. It's been replicated over to Montreal. Okay? I'm not connected directly to the Excel spreadsheet. I will not be connected directly to that database once the data has been brought in. It's separate. So in some cases, I may have to replace the data. Okay? So let's say I'm a week later. I know there's new data that has actually come in. I got a brand new spreadsheet or what have you. The way that this works right now is that it replaces everything in that asset. Okay? Up on this spot. So if you the move option here is that you can create your own folder, okay, if you want. Or if you're working with your students and you want them to work with that data, you can move that data set into a folder where all the students can actually get to it. Okay, so this is a way of you actually making sure that if there's any data you're giving to the students, it's ready to go. Okay, and you can apply any kind of refinement to it if you want also. Okay, or you can delete it. If you go delete, it's a hard delete. Yeah.
Is there kind of a limitation or something like that around the amount of data you can upload there?
Great question. So I know that on the free version, it's 100,000 rows, unless they've actually changed that. On the professional version, I believe it's a terabyte. I can't read.
Okay. So
I have it. It's a lot. It's a lot. A million. I know some people that are bringing in 4 million rows of data, and they're okay. So the pro version does offer quite a bit on an individual file, and then you have, I think, 100 gig of space that you're working with. So it's plenty of room. So good question. For the data itself, there's also this 62% quality. Okay, that has to do with the predictive quality of the data itself. So with regards to any kind of predictions, so if you have a target that you're looking at and you want to take a look at what the actual factors that affect that target are, that's what the 62% means. It doesn't mean that 62% of the data is good and the other 38 is bad. That's not what it means at all. And it has caused confusion in the past, but just so you know right away, that's what that means. So to actually work on the discovery side of the data itself, you can just click on that tile or that data asset, or you can click on the discover part, and then it'll ask you, well, which one do you want to work with, right? What information do you want to work with? So each of these tiles here, okay, up across the top, give you access to different areas, okay? If you've done some discoveries already on that information, and you've saved them, if you go to the discover side, you'll see those tiles in here. These two here, these two discoveries were done on the default data. Okay, they've provided some defaults for you. That's what this is all about. Those are all about. So we're going to start off with the HR data itself, and this is what it comes up with. It has what is the trend of course cost over a year by department. And what I could do is I could just pick one of those, and it'll open up it'll open up the chart for me on that. And it'll give me some additional information, which you'll see in a moment. But the other thing is that the actual image that you see right here, okay, will tell you what type of chart you're going to actually be looking at. So this one over here is expense is my target predictor that I want to take a look at. Over here I have a bar chart. Here's a line chart. Here's a heat map, etc. So a bubble chart. So the actual images do actually mean something. Now, what I'm going to do for our particular case, and I'm going to show you first off, is how to actually, once we've already got the import done, but how do I ask a question? Okay, right up at the top here, this is where you would enter your question in. But if you want to understand a little bit about how to answer questions, there's this part right here to assist you. And if you click on it, it will bring you into some samples. There are keywords that you can use, but you don't have to stick with them. Because you'll see in a moment, we're going to be actually entering in one of our own questions, and I'm not necessarily going to use all the keywords that are there, but there are different types of questions. I may be comparing data, I may want to be looking for relationships, okay, or identify some kind of patterns. I may want to do some take a look at the aggregation of information, sorting, filtering, predicting, et cetera, et cetera. So those are all in there. And Tony, one of the things here is the predict has been included into this part now.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Okay, so it's been
yeah.
merged together and all. So just so you know, for anybody who's used it. And they have the starting points down below that they're actually showing to you still also. Okay? Or you can go right off and start creating whatever visualization that you want to do right from, and they give you the default type of charts or relationships, and they've broken them down into the different types also. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm not going to select any one of those. I mean, you can go to these drop downs here. These drop downs right now are actually giving you some examples of each of those types of questions with the data that you've actually uploaded. So I can actually go into the drop down, change whatever's there, and actually run it from here also. Okay, if I wanted to. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually enter in a question. instead, so let's just go right up over here, and I'm going to say what is, let's see, 1 second. Actually, I forgot to close this here first. Close that. Now, what I'd like you to do is just watch the interface itself. So what is the cost of courses, and if I can type properly, you can tell I'm not the greatest typer in the world, by organization. Now, what's going to happen here, and I'll put in that question mark at the end also, and if I just hit enter, what will happen is that Watson Analytics will go off and it'll say, okay, this is what I understand you're asking, and it'll also tag everything with most relevant, somewhat relevant, not relevant. Well, it won't give you a not relevant at all, by the way. So what it'll do is it'll actually go through and based on the question that you've typed in, and you'll notice that, I mean, I said, what is the cost of courses by organization? That's a very English natural language. This is where the natural language processing comes in. So I've got that one in there, and if this isn't what I want to look at, I can click on the show next. If this isn't what I want, okay. There is a, what is the breakdown of course cost by organization, but it'll give you up to 10 different questions that you might be wanting to look at, and you can navigate between them by hitting the show previous or the show next. The one that I'm going to actually grab in this case is what is the breakdown of course cost by organization. That's the one I'm going to use. And basically what I get coming up here is a heat map. Now this is all automatically generated in the background. What Watson Analytics also has, when it's actually reading everything in and it's creating these explore points, is it also has a little bit of an algorithm in the back saying this is the best way to actually display this information. So this is one thing that we're going to take up a little bit more with our students this year is what is the right visualization to use in what situation, okay, which they're missing. And I know at a workshop that I did at Ryerson, that was the one thing. I said, well, which visualization? Do I use a pie graph? Do I use a line chart? So we're going to include some of that stuff in there also.
What's the basic data structure that you loaded up, this Excel spreadsheet or CSV sheet?
It's just a comma delimited file that I have.
No, I mean
Just a file.
content-wise, what is in there?
Oh, I'm going to show you that. I'm going to show you that in a second, okay? Because you can actually look at it from here. So I'll get into that in a couple moments. So just with this visualization right here, we've got a heat map. Now you've got a number of pieces of information. You can see the course costs over here. There's a scale that I can adjust if I wanted to. If I wanted to get a little bit more information about something, I can just go over to this side here. Okay. You'll also notice that there's some extra discoveries on the side, okay, that are shown for us. And for any of these, I can select any one of them, and then that chart there, or microchart, will become the main chart that shows up over here, and it'll create some extra discoveries based on that one for me. So it'll do that all automatically in the background. Okay, makes it a lot easier. Now, I've had a complaint from some profs saying that this makes the course too easy. Okay, and the thing is, the reality is it doesn't, because you still have to be able to interpret everything that's out there. So I'm just saying, it was from an American one. Is anybody American here? No. You're gonna erase that off there, right? So, which is true. But anyway, no, it truly, people ask, well, doesn't this make everything a little bit too easy? And you can see organization. If I went into here, I can go into organization, and these are the different organizations. You can see the check marks. If I wanted to, I can actually do filtering at this point. And it's simply just turning off a check mark. Okay. And I can do that on course cost also. Down in course cost down over here. I've got the course cost that's been listed. If I want to go to a different cost that happens to be in here, I can go down and pick another cost. If I wanted to, here's the heat buy, is by course cost. If I wanted to do the heat map in a different way, I can change that. As far as the rows go, if there's any rows I want to add in, or set up a calculation based on what's on here, then I can. Okay, if I click on the triple dots, if you ever see triple dots, that means you've got some extra capability. And you can click on it, and it'll, right now this is all done by course summing. If I click, let's see, or let's see. I can go through all these, or I can click on plus. Usually what happens is it just lets me get back to where I was before. Or I can click on something else, like I said, that's out there. It'll revisualize and it'll create some new discoveries. So every discovery that I do, I'm not sure if anybody noticed, is it creates a new tab up at the top. So you don't lose anything. If I want to go back to what I was looking at before, okay, I can go back to what I was looking at before. Okay, and I can do a refresh. So I can do undos all the way through. And up over here is if I wanted to save that visualization as it is, I can do that also. So different. I apologize because, if I just do a reset here. Okay, I'm not sure why the color's not coming back. Okay, so there's some things that I'm not used to getting back that I was able to in the previous version. But anyway, the idea here is you get some default visualizations and they actually will show up there for you. Now, at any point in time, if you can see the visualizations, obviously there's no numbers on this, but down at the bottom, you'll notice that there are column headers. This is all the data that I've actually imported in. These are the column headers that are there. And you'll also notice that there is these horizontal bars, and if I click on that, then I can actually take a look at some of the data that I've actually imported in. Now, generally what I normally do for the students is I actually get them to take a look at the data set before they actually bring it into the tool itself. But the other thing is that you can also look at it at any point in time. If you look down at the bottom of the actual window you're working with, there's those horizontal bars where you can actually go in and take a look at the data itself. Now, the other thing here is that you can also work with each of the different sets of data itself. So here's department, and you'll notice that I have customer service, executive offices, finance. So what's actually happened here is that they've created a hierarchy of who falls in what based on the data that was there. So I have the department over here, but I also have another department column over here. Oops. That shows me each of the individual departments, but we also have, as I mentioned over here, the position for everybody that's been listed, and it's all been automatically, hierarchy's been actually set up for it.
So the first column was not part of the data set.
No. Okay, so it's automatically will create it. Now, if there's time information, this is year here. We have the course days. We've got some course costs and stuff. I think this data set only had year in it, but if it had month and day, it would have created a year, quarter, month type of setup also. Now, if you want to, that's the actual data set itself. And if you click on the three dots, you can also go to the properties, and you can change the name. You can take a look at the type, and you can see that it's a hierarchy. So if you wanted to actually edit that hierarchy, you click on this, and you can see the levels that have been put together here, which is a lot more navigable than what it was in the previous version. It's a much cleaner type of setup here. So you can.
Better, or is that too good?
It's actually a little better.
Yeah, I think it's better too. Thanks. That's perfect. So you can add in another level based on the data that's available, or you can actually get rid of the hierarchy itself if you wanted to, or you can just back out of this. So for every one of these, if I just go over to the department itself and try to find something that I can actually get to. So if you can actually click on this and actually take a look and do the same thing. So you can actually go and play with each of the different columns, take a look at the properties. You can put your filtering in on this side, create your calculations, set up those data groupings that I mentioned. There's the hierarchy itself. This icon here gives you a little bit more of an idea of the distribution of values within each column. So you can see here that for departments, I have, there's no missing values, okay? how suitable the information is in there. So the actual overall quality score of 68% that we saw earlier was basically, they take all of these and they average them out. Okay, there's an algorithm in the background for it.
Just wanted to comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
Don't ask me to replicate this, but I remember in class.
You'll be able to, because
But we did things like calculate an average across 3 fields.
yes.
Just little things like that. You can do that right here rather than going back to your source data. You can do it right here.
Yeah,
So-
exactly. And that's part of the point, because sometimes that source data file
Yeah.
comes from somebody else.
Yeah.
And they don't want you fooling around with
Yeah,
it, but
right.
you can
Yeah.
certainly do it in here. Yeah, good point. The other part is this one down here. This is where you can see what's a hierarchy. You can see if something is a text type value, if there's any counts on it, if there's any sorting. This area I find especially helpful is when I'm bringing IDs in, because IDs usually are made numeric, and I want them to be treated as text. I don't want them to be calculated or anything like that, because it's a numeric value, right? Depending on how the comma delimited file or the spreadsheets are set up. So some of the people who use spreadsheets, they'll actually go in and make something character-based, so that when it's imported, it's interpreted as that. So there are those types of things that you can work on here. And again, you can click on any one of these and go to the tile, go to those, and then set up a calculation based on external hires, or set up a data grouping based on that column or what have you. Right? So that's how you can get direct access to the data itself and what was actually brought in. And then if you click on those horizontal bars again, it shrinks them down to the bottom, but they're always there. So I'll show you afterwards some other items that you can work with on that. Just bear with me here for a second. I'm trying to make sure. I'm actually kind of surprised because I've already covered a lot of some of the stuff that I wanted to look at. So course days. So let's click on course days. So you can see Southern Europe. There's 282 days of course days that they've had. The Corp itself has 317. If I click in an open area on the chart, it basically highlights everything again. Okay. If this isn't enough, right now I've got course days that are summed, and I've got the organization across. Some cases, some people want to see the breakdown by year. So if I wanted to see the breakdown by year, I can simply drag it into the middle, and it'll actually break it down. Now, the thing is I think I only have 1 year of data in here, so that really doesn't help very much at all. If we wanted to do it by department, for example, we'll drop department in. Let's see if we get something else. You can see the breakdown of department. If you don't like the setup of the actual chart itself, really what you can do is go back over to the visualization side of things, and or the format, and actually take a look at the colors that are being used. You can take a look at the variations, whether you want it stacked or not, whether you want it 100% stacked. So it's very easy to actually change the way that the information is shown. If there are, you can also change the title style itself. With regards to numbers or larger numbers, you'll notice that, let me just close this one here so we can see it. You notice 1.4K, 1K 800 or what have you. Watson Analytics will automatically take values into the thousands, replace with a K. If it's millions, it's an M. For billions, it's a B, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that the actual labeling that happens on any of these types of charts is a lot easier to take a look at. I could easily go over to departments, to the department over here, and do some changes. If I didn't like the change I made, there is always the undo that's available at the top, and it'll basically take me back to as far as I worked on this particular tab. If I wanted to change what I'm using up over here, I can simply click on any of these and replace it with something else. So if I didn't want to look at course cost, but I wanted to take a look at the expense total instead, I can put that into there. Again, I can drag anything else in. There is a color by down at the bottom, so you know the way that I actually brought in the department, I could go into the color by and select anything down here also, and it would do the same thing. So you have either the drag and drop or sections and actually pick something out. And this is where, now you know why this is called the discovery side of things, is that you can do the discoveries of the actual information itself and play around with how it works. There's also, as far as this discovery area over here, you can scroll down. There's multiple discoveries. And honestly, the other thing is that if I do drag something else on there, in the background, that statistical engine or the SPSS engine will regenerate these discoveries on the right-hand side that you see. So it'll give you something that's more pertinent to what you're actually taking a look at. All right. If you wanted to, you could always close that window by clicking on the X up at the top corner over here. So the other thing I generally tell people is that once you've actually got something that you like, make sure that you do a save. Or you do a save as, or you could reset it. If I do a reset, it'll say discard the changes that I've made, and it'll bring me back to here. Now, if I go to the discovery, you'll notice that there's nothing there because I didn't do a save, right? So that's part of I've had to stress to the students, they have left that discovery side without saving anything, and they've lost some of the work that they've done. I said, you need to do the save, or else all the things you're doing is just going through and dynamically doing whatever you want, which is also a part of the tool. But if you want to save something to put together as a dashboard, then you want to start saving some of the items that you have. This is the nightmare part for a teacher, right? Where you just kind of sit there and watch that little circle keep going. It's usually an hourglass, right? And so, anyway, so that's gonna.
On the other hand, it keeps the students sane, right?
Yeah, for a little bit. Oh, thank God I stopped talking. Although I never stopped. I'm Italian, so I keep talking. Use my hands all over the place. So. And then at a certain point, I say, okay, that's enough of that. We'll go back to what we have over here. So, the nice thing about this part right here is you've got your planned position counts. If you click on it, you can see the different counts. You can see all the